Hello, I'm James Valentine. This is The Mix, arts, show, business and entertainment. Now, I'm on board the Sun Princess not because I've retired and reached cruising age, but this is where Gillian Armstrong is staging the world premiere of her new film, Women He's Undressed, the story of Ori Kelly. Who, I hear you ask? Well, that's pretty much the entire point of the film. Tell you more in a little while. We'll talk to Gillian Armstrong. Here's what else we're doing. Hobart illuminated with Dark Mofonus.
Dark Mofo is a festival that is really focused on experience.
Bangara's Elemental new season.
It's just as much of a learning experience for us, being in the company, learning about our culture.
And when too many films is never enough.
Let's get smashed!
In the 1920s, a young man from the New South Wales south coast sailed for America to chase his dream of stardom. His name was Ori Kelly, and he went on to become one of Hollywood's greatest costume designers. He was all but forgotten until director Gillian Armstrong discovered his story. She's made a documentary about Ori Kelly called Women He's Undressed, which debuted this week at the Sydney Film Festival. Minutes to go to premiere.
It is, yes.
How does that feel?
Well, I am a bit terrified, but I actually have to admit that I'm so excited to be standing on the deck of a ship in Circular Quay with, you know, beautiful opera house and a liner behind us.
We did well. We did well.
Yes.
We organised all that. I'd like to
Thank
thank all the cruise ship industry for their participation in this segment, directed by Gillian Armstrong, can I just say.
And I would like to, just taking us back to the film, because we're here really, to talk about Women He's Undressed, which is going to open Australian-wide on July the 16th.
Oh, is it?
It is, because Ori Kelly, at age 24, climbed aboard a ship here in Circular Quay and left Australia to make it big in Hollywood. Right. And did he make it big?
Ori Kelly was one of the greatest costume designers of all time.
Had you ever heard of him?
I had never heard of him.
I reckon I might have heard mention, you know, like that there was an Australian who won Academy Awards.
The winner is Ori Kelly.
But that was it. That'd be it.
I have to say I'm very ashamed, as not only do I work in film and I've worked in Hollywood, and actually I love costume and costume design. I had never heard of him. Yeah. So this is my apology to Ori. So I spent 2.5 years researching his life.
Yeah. Well, let's just list some of the achievements, because it's not like, it would be one thing that he won Academy Awards and that he made it in Hollywood as a costume designer and that sort of thing, but the films are extraordinary. It's Casablanca.
I reserve a table. Victor Laszlo.
Yes, Monsieur Laszlo. Right this way.
It's an American in Paris.
It is, and 42nd Street, and Some Like It Hot, and Les Girls, and Oklahoma, and Irma la Douce, and Maine, and Maltese Falcon.
It's the Maltese Falcon.
Yeah.
You know, like these are not just sort of, oh, you know, there was a Humphrey Bogart film and there was one with Marilyn Monroe. They're the Humphrey Bogart and Marilyn Monroe films. It's incredible, isn't it?
It is.
What's the matter now?
How do they walk in these things, huh?
He did Tony Curtis and Jack Lemmon, their costumes in Some Like It Hot. Forget Marilyn.
You could not take your eyes off her breasts.
You're not giving yourself a chance. Don't fight it.
What was there to find of Ori Kelly, of what's left of him and what's left of his work? What record did he leave?
Well, it's actually very hard to find out about a costume designer, because people over the years, they don't ask them about their personal life. They just ask them about, you know, should someone wear a spot with a stripe or a long hem's in or something. But when Ori came back to Australia, he was known in the 30s and 40s, and he was interviewed as our famous Ori from Hollywood. Right. And that we started to get a sense from his little quotes that this was a man with a great dry sense of humour. That was part of the journey, finding out, well, who was he? What was he like? Because there were all sorts of stories that he'd been fired, he was outrageous, he was a drunk, and we've actually found 4 incredible 90-year-olds who either knew him or worked with him, who we tracked down in LA and New York, and one, June Daly Watkins in Sydney, who could tell us about the real man.
Right, incredible. Another aspect of the real man, gay, and Cary Grant's lover, true?
You have to come and see the film.
You could.
You have to come and see the film. But it is true that Ori and Cary were flatmates in Greenwich Village in the 20s in New York when they were both starting out. And we found out a lot more.
Women, He's Undressed premieres in cinemas on July the 7th. Winter in Hobart used to mean staying inside and turning up the heater. Well, that was until dark mofo took over and started to get the Taswegians out into the streets and enjoying all sorts of dark and mysterious art events. Supple Fox are a collective behind some of mofo's more provocative events, and this year they're offering a thing called Blacklist, which presents and explores sounds that make you go, yeah. ABC Arts' Tim Stone will explain all.
One of the things that Dark Mofo does really well is that we're pretty good at not telling people anything. We put out evocative imagery and then let people make up what it's going to be. The Red Death Ball was a really interesting one. We really looked at trying to make the venue the performer as opposed to programming it. And it just sort of allowed this very amorphous program to unroll, and people didn't know who was performer and who wasn't because everyone was so dressed up. Dark Mofo is a festival that is really focused on experience, and it's quite different in that way.
Hannah and I have had an interest in a collective experience of ASMR in a public space.
Blacklist fits in with that idea where we've really thought about what kind of feelings we want to provoke. One of the ways we've done that is we've made these video works and performance works that will tie into the event itself, and the audio is going to be used all throughout the festival.
ASMR stands for Autonomous Sensory Meridian Response, which basically is a euphoric sensation which is triggered by a variety of stimuli which are often auditory or tactile.
I get this reaction to very particular types of paper, this kind of rain of chills that go down your skull and through your neck.
It's a tingling sensation that often starts in your head and runs all the way down your spine, and if it's a really good one, can go right through your limbs.
There are millions and millions of people around the world experiencing this.
On YouTube you'll find thousands of videos with people trying to trigger these responses.
I believe in my own obsessions, in the beauty of the car crash, in the peace of the submerged forest.
In the production values, I was really interested in kind of trying to single out the movement and make everything super crisp and a little bit hyper-real in a similar way in which the audio is kind of produced. And also kind of bring in a kind of theatric. There's a kind of surrealness to the kind of everydayness of ASMR.
Because it's such a DIY realm, most people are filming it in their lounge room. You're not getting really high-resolution pictures or sound quality. We're all very susceptible to it, we all experience it, and we just like to see what happens when we blow that up to a large scale and give it to people in a public context.
Choreograph the chaos, I guess, is the best way to put it, by bringing in the right mix of energy and stimulus and content, and also allowing enough space for spontaneity and chaos to happen, and I think that's what makes it really work.
Dark Mofo runs until June 22nd at venues around Hobart. Bangarra Dance Theatre's new season kicked off this week with a production called Law. It's a new work full of their signature physical beauty, but it's not just an entertainment. It's about using dance and movement as a means of communication and as a way of archiving the history of Australia's Indigenous people. Rachel Papazzoni takes us backstage for the creation of Law.
This is the way that we communicate. It's the way in which we record and document our history. This is ceremonial when the dancers are on stage.
Bangara's latest offering takes audiences inside Australia's Indigenous culture, from the shade of the grand she oak tree to the convenience stores of the Torres Strait Islands. And the dancers are putting the final touches on the show inside Australia's most iconic performance house. Choreographer Francis Ring's seventh piece for the company, She Oak, shows audiences the significance of the grand tree.
This is a tree that is, it's a scar tree. It's used to make implements. It's used as food. It's used as medicine. They actually refer to it as the grandmother tree because when you sit beneath it, it's like you can hear voices of the elders, of the ancestors.
The new piece is a collaborative work created with the company's designer and its 16 dancers.
She Oak really reflects the stories of Bangara. For 25 years we've told other people's stories. I wanted this to be a place where we told our stories and about our communities. Even though we live in an urban environment, it doesn't mean that we're out of touch with what goes on in our own communities, and we really wanted to bring that to the stage and share that.
For the first time, company dancers Deborah Brown and Waniga Blanco have collaborated on a new work for the double bill season. IBIS takes its name from the Island Board of Industry and Services, which are small stores run by the local community.
It really is about community. It's really about getting the islanders to run the stores and themselves. There's quite a number of them that are scattered and dispersed across the Torres Strait Islands.
Before the choreographers started creating the steps, they travelled to the Torres Strait to hear stories of their people firsthand.
It's just as much of a learning experience for us, being in the company, learning about our culture and having the opportunity to go back to our island, our family originated from. So it was really special to just go back and sit down with our family and just like this and just chill and sit by the ocean, hear stories.
Those stories form the basis of the new work, which explores the role of the small shops and the modern-day hunters and gatherers.
We sort of naturally just started doing what we felt was right. And Deborah's worked with the ladies on a ladies' piece, and I've worked with the men on a men's piece. And then from there, we pretty much collaborated on everything else together.
I like to think that people walk away, they have a bit of insight into Indigenous culture. They see the value in it and they recognise that this is part of Australia's identity.
Bangara's Law will be touring Australia until September the 5th. In Arts News this week, the other big event at Hobart's Dark Mofo Festival is the exhibition celebrating the career of New York-based performance artist Marina Abramovich. For 40 plus years, Abramovich has made artworks about bodily pain and endurance. The documentation of these harrowing actions are now on display at Mona. Elsewhere in Hobart, the theme of the macabre continues with Dark Mofo unveiling a series of light, sound and fire artworks at Macquarie Point, a place where in colonial times public executions and corporal punishment were once dished out. Australia's power couple of opera have both been named as Officers of the Order of Australia as part of the Queen's birthday celebrations. Childhood sweethearts turned opera superstars Cheryl Barker and Peter Coleman Wright received the awards for services to the performing arts. Also recognised was Aboriginal singer Archie Roach, who was made a member of the Order of Australia for services to the performing arts and social justice. And Iggy Azalea has been forced to pull out of a performance at the Pittsburgh Pride Festival after a series of protests from gay and lesbian groups. The rapper from Mullumbimby is under fire for a series of homophobic tweets posted in 2011 before she became famous. Well, grabbing about 2 seconds between films to come to the pub is Kate Jinks, Golden Age Cinema.
That's me.
How's it going?
Doing very well.
RN, Jason DeRosso, going all right?
Hi, very well.
Excellent. Let's see how you've been going at the Sydney Film Festival. Let's talk about one of the docos on Amy, story of Amy Winehouse. Kate, what do you think?
Yeah, look, there's been so much hype about this film.
I felt like I had nothing new that was coming out at the time that really represented me or the way I felt, so I just started writing.
I went in as not a particular fan of her music and walked out a huge fan. I think that's
me too,
those.
What had you missed before, Kate?
Oh
What
God,
didn't
I'm
you get?
so embarrassed. I know. I've just been buying up her collection ever since. No, it's a really interesting documentary that looks at this really awkward teenage girl emerge as a worldwide pop star and just not really be able to cope, and she just didn't have the support mechanism around her that she needed.
Her father emerges as this really incompetent father figure, I have to say.
Oh,
Apparently he's not been happy with the film
Lindsay
at all.
Lohan's, right?
Yeah, I mean it's pretty tragic. And
That's a tragic scale, isn't it?
Yeah, no,
Lohan,
it's bad.
Father Winehouse.
Yeah, exactly.
I was like you, I wasn't a fan, but what emerges is her capacities as a lyricist and her maturity. I mean, she was ready to go on stage and kind of be as big as she was as a performer, but was not ready for the circus around her.
How big do you think you're going to be?
I don't at all, because my music is not on that scale. The music is not on that scale.
What I thought was really interesting about it was the use of all the paparazzi shots. It made the audience made me feel really complicit in that. So it's kind of commenting on the paparazzi just following her and hounding her in these terrible moments in her life. But a lot of the footage actually come from those paparazzi shots, and that's how we are getting to see that story.
Fantastic. All right, on to something more in the dramatic area, The Daughter. Jason.
Yeah, well, this has a lot of hope around it because it's got a great pedigree, this film, great performers on screen. Simon Stone is the director, his first feature film, but he's a renowned theatre director, and he'd put on a version of this script, the play, Ibsen's The Wild Duck, at the Belvoir Theatre in Sydney. So a lot of hopes. I was disappointed by it, though. My main gripe is with Geoffrey Rush, one of our best actors, for me, as the kind of villain of the piece. And this is about a small town and the kind of the terrible sins of this very rich man who kind of owns this town, really. His presence was really lacking. I found it dramatically really unsatisfying.
Because he's so menacing as the Pirate King, you'd think he'd be able to pull that off. Did you like it yourself?
That's the only thing I agree with, Jason, that Geoffrey Rush was perhaps not cast correctly or used to his potential.
Not used, I think. Yeah.
But I loved this film. There's just so much heart and emotion within the production. I thought it was really beautiful. I mean, it's set in this tiny Australian timber town, and the landscape's lovely, and the composition, the score was great. I don't know, I just find that so many Australian films have this score that makes everything sound like a wine region ad, and I didn't pick that up with this film.
I thought that had this score.
No, disagree.
Many,
Maybe it depends on which wine region you like,
But, melancholy piano chord rings out. I don't know, I wanted to like this a lot more, because the story obviously is interesting. You've got a rich family, poor family, two childhood mates. One is
Skeletons in the closet. It's got it all.
All this
sounds a bit like If You're in the Right Mood. It sounds like, to me, that strikes me as one of those films. If you're slightly in the wrong mood for it, it'll just glance straight off you.
Perhaps. The performances were really quite stunning too, apart from Rush, perhaps. And Desi Young was brilliant as the teenage daughter, the titular daughter.
Who ultimately ends up being some kind of victim of the whole sort of maelstrom of adult dysfunction.
It sounds like a Tennessee Williams piece almost.
Well,
yeah,
Williams,
I guess coming from an Ibsen play, it's Ibsen, Chekhov, Tennessee Williams, one of those sort of.
I mean, I agree that the craft of acting on display is high. I just don't think the filmic elements come together to sort of highlight the film. It should have been something on par with the great Bergman film or something, and it really isn't, in my opinion.
It's also his feature debut.
No, absolutely, and he's not without talent or promise, obviously.
Yeah.
What I like in hearing both of you talk about is I now want to see it.
Great.
There's a lot in there to consider. So that's fantastic. That's the daughter. Now I think the point of going to the festival to me is the weird thing you don't really expect, the thing from Kurdistan, the Mexican drama or something like that. That everyone's suddenly going, have you seen this thing? Anything like that, Jason?
Yeah, I saw a wonderful 6-hour black and white Filipino film by Lav Diaz.
That's
and he made sure that there was no intermission as well.
6-hour black and white Filipino, yes.
About a village, very slow moving film, wonderful film. Just briefly, I'll describe it. It starts off kind of like this village Catholic melodrama, the village priest, a pair of sisters who have these magical healing powers. But then about 4 hours into it, wonderful intrigue and kind of ominous mood. 4 hours into it, the army arrives. It's set on the eve of President Marcos imposing martial law on the country in '72. The film becomes this wonderful tapestry of sort of socio-political, geopolitical tensions and Cold War tensions. I was in a trance for most of this, in a good way. Really enjoyed it. It's called From What Is Before. From What Is Before, and it's screening on Sunday morning as well in Sydney.
Kate?
This year, the film that I'm really, really excited about seeing is Tangerine, which is an American indie film that was quite a hit at the recent Sundance Festival.
I got some good news to tell you about me and Chester.
I know what it is! You're breaking up with him. Thank God! Him to be cheating on you like that.
Wait, what?
It's shot on an iPhone 5. The whole film. It's the first feature film to be shown kind of in a large festival that is shot that way. It's like a very tricked out phone. And it's set in LA, and it focuses on these 2 transgender sex workers, one of whom's just come out of prison and finds out that her lover / pimp is cheating on her, and she takes to the streets with her friend to go and hunt him down. And it's supposed to be really funny and great. I love those sorts of films that you might not get to see otherwise.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you to film festivals.
To film festivals.
Amy will have a national release on July the 2nd, and both The Daughter and Tangerine will hit screens later this year. Well, what you've just seen is a measured, focused discussion of some of the serious films showing at the Sydney Film Festival. But to get the full film festival experience, you need to link up with a festival tragic, someone like arts journalist Dee Jefferson. Over the course of the 10 days of the festival, she'll see 40-plus movies. So what we've asked her to do is, after each screening, just deliver a one-line review into the camera on her phone. Here's the result of that experiment.
So I've just seen my first film at the festival, Slow West. Interesting, probably not interesting enough.
I'm dying.
I really like Last Cab to Darwin. This film has such a big part.
I reckon that girl's a goner.
Strangeland at the State Theatre. Really interesting film.
What you working on?
Get pregnant. I just saw a film about pregnancies and then found out that my best friend is engaged, so I'm having all the emotions.
My name is Minnie Cat.
I'm in love with Minnie. I love that film. Nasty baby. No. No more, please.
Here's my therapist.
Pretty funny seeing a screwball comedy at the Hayden Museum with a really rowdy crowd.
English Vice Associate.
Kristen Petzold's Phoenix, just absolutely superb.
Let's get smashed!
I'm actually off to the pub to argue about Ruben Guthrie.
You remember Laura?
It's not as bad as I had heard. It's actually really good and interesting. Terror and Taxi. It's not just that truth is stranger than fiction, it's that it's better than fiction. Such an effing awesome film. Just saw Sherpa by Jen Peetham. It's about the voracious appetite of the First World for money and for conquest. Really grippingly made, but I didn't really care about the characters. Vincent was such a cute concept, but I just found the film really a bit boring. It's definitely the opposite of everything that you would think the Beach Boys were. Tales is a great film. It's a really important film out of Iran. I kind of wish I'd seen it when I was feeling a little less of the festival fatigue.
No.
So far she's seen 20 films in 5 days. That's 4 films a day. That's a little much for me. But let's check in with Dee. Let's see how she's coping. Dee, can you hear me?
Yep.
So how are you?
I'm all right. I've had a lot of emotions over the last 10 days.
Okay, well the main question I have is why?
I cannot even answer why I do it. I don't even think about it. I've been doing it for probably 10 years now, and I just keep coming back. As soon as the program goes on sale, I start booking my tickets. I have a system at this point, and it just makes me really happy, even though by the end of it I always wonder why I did it.
Oh, there's a system. Okay, so you figure out when one is finishing and then you just straight into the next one?
Not exactly. So I book the competition first, because I know that I want to see that kind of range of world cinema, and then I get to just jump in to the unknown, which I kind of love.
How are you travelling? You still got a few to go?
I've actually lost track of time. I have 20 films left.
Easy, no problem.
Yeah, easy, right?
Well, I hope you've got supplies, you've got a thermos, you've got sandwiches. Do you have trail mix?
I do not. I do, but I am very good at picking up the snacks that I need and hydrating. I like to think that I am a perfectly honed cinema watching machine.
Well, thanks, Dee. Thanks for the reviews. Good luck in the home stretch. See you soon.
All right.
Sydney Film Festival finishes this weekend. And finally on the mix, have you ever wondered what happens to things that you've lost? Keys, for example, or footwear, or friends, or memories, for that matter. Hikaru Shiota knows where they are. The Japanese artist collected 50,000 keys and wove them together in a kind of spider's web of lost memories and connections. It's called The Key in the Hand, and it's the smash hit of this year's Venice Biennale. Hikaru Shiota is Japanese, but she moved to Berlin in the 90s to study with, well, yes, you guessed it, Marina Abramovic. Since then, she's been weaving her tangled webs, crawling around the subconscious, entwining suitcases, chairs and dresses. Chiharu's name means 1,000 springs, which is probably how long it will take her to untie her handiwork. Well, that's all we've got time for on The Mix. I hope you've enjoyed this look around ship life. Thanks so much. And if you get a chance to see Women He's Undressed by Gillian Armstrong, if it's screened near you, do go and see it. It's absolutely fantastic. If you want to know more, go to abc.net.au/arts. Follow us on Twitter @abcarts and tell your friends to catch up with us on iView. I'm James Valentine. See you soon. You were good.